Hello, everybody. First of all, I want to thank you for everyone that prayed for us in Cedar Rapids and in Iowa and throughout the Midwest because of the incredible hurricane. And I want to do a teaching on the hurricane and its lessons from Cedar Rapids. I've lived most of my life in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Cedar Rapids is about as Midwestern as you can get, situated in lush, verdant eastern Iowa along the Cedar River. People are known for a hard work ethic, mostly responsible, sober-minded, with Midwestern sensibilities. Many are churchgoers and generally a conservative outlook on life for the most part. Now, obviously, in parentheses, the toxic culture is eating away from all of that here as it is everywhere else. Every summer in Iowa, there are often severe thunderstorms and even tornadoes as the Arctic fronts from Canada sweep down the natural funnel formed by America's two north-south mountain ranges, the Rockies to the west and the Allegheny to the east, forming something called Tornado Alley. Tornadoes form when Arctic air confronts the hot updrafts from the Gulf of Mexico. Midwesterners are not unfamiliar with clearing up the devastation and debris of tornadoes every year. This is just part of living in this part of the country. What happened last Monday was not a tornado. It was an inland hurricane, straight line winds in unrelenting gusts up to 120 miles per hour. Not for the 10 frantic minutes or so that tornadoes usually wreak their damage. These winds range for a good 45 minutes to an hour. I've been through many tornado storms and even cleaned up the dairy farm of a family who went to our church after it was hit by a tornado. It looked like a bomb went off as we picked up shattered pieces of buildings, metal sheeting wrapped around the trees, and in parentheses I say, one was twice wrapped around a tree by the wind. I have no idea how that happened. The buildings were ruined, windows, doors, massive limbs, trunks of once stately trees lay about as if they were the remains of a Civil War battlefield. A line of older trees had lined the long driveway leading up to the farm, and at about 20 feet up, they were snapped off all along the line as if a giant skill saw ripped up through the line. This is the power of a tornado. We're all familiar with it, and most Midwesterners have at one time or another seen a bright day in the summer turn black or even an eerie pale green and had to wait out these storms in a basement somewhere, praying for them to end. But as a lifelong Iowan, I have never seen such a storm as what I witnessed last week. We saw, from our basement vantage point, huge trees snapped off at the ground, tossed by the straight line howling winds, as if a child had thrown a feather in the breeze. A drive through Cedar Rapids after the storm showed 30 or 40 foot oak or maple trees knocked over, pulled up by the roots, and in some cases, the ball of the tree that was normally underground upended along with the concrete sidewalks which once went alongside of it, and the ground like a disturbed carpet, still covering the ball of the tree, only now on its side. Transformers were exploding, power lines were snapped off, billboards set in concrete and held up by iron girders were flattened to the ground, as were huge traffic lights, street lights, company signs, trees, and even some buildings. Roofs were ripped off of houses, and in many cases, now get this, brick facades and even brick walls were stripped off of buildings. Google Cedar Rapids for yourself, and Google Cedar Rapids or destruction or Jericho, and you will begin to see the monumental destruction which occurred across the whole Midwest, from somewhere in Nebraska straight across to Iowa or Ohio, which is a stretch of about 1,000 miles. We have to ask if we have any spiritual sensitivity at all. What is God saying to us in this storm? God speaks through things like this. He speaks through ordinary natural events, but this one is extraordinary. I learned a new word, Jericho. I've never heard it before, but a Jericho is a land hurricane. Now, one of the things I think he's saying is that these are the last days. Hurricanes usually occur along coasts or out at sea, but we just experienced one 2,000 miles inland in any direction from any ocean. Jesus said the last days would be characterized by many unusual natural disasters. And I quote, "And there shall be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, and men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the very powers of heaven shall be shaken." Luke 21:25-26. Now, personally, I live on 10 acres with my family. On one end of the lot is a building and parking lot for our church fellowship, and I live on the back end. Thankfully, God spared us our home and our family. None were hurt, and for this we profoundly praise and thank God. Now, I did lose 7 huge trees on our lot. We're currently in the process of cleaning them up, as is our entire city. Everywhere you go, you hear chainsaws, you smell smoke, people are burning the brush. I planted most of those trees myself. Okay, all right, I did it with my sons. One of them I plucked out of the swampy ditch along the highway and transplanted it as a little sapling, not even as round as my little finger. It grew to a tree over 30 feet tall, and I have to admit, I loved it, and the other trees I planted. I loved them. We delighted in the growth, the shade, and the thought that something so weak and frail could grow into something so majestic, so beautiful, and so useful. There's a special joy, obviously, in growing things and participation in the cultivation of life. Like those trees, many a pastor has labored among God's church, working with other dedicated ones to unite the body, to center everything around Christ, to facilitate regular worship and prayer and teaching and fellowship and communion and even sacrifice. Now, you know, obviously, this doesn't come automatically. And a wind can come and really test all of that. A wind of doctrine or immorality, perhaps a tornado of avarice or enmity, jealousy, party spirit, and eventually a hurricane will come, which will be the final testing of all that has been planted, watered, nurtured, cried over, and prayed for. And only that which is truly rooted in Jesus, love and loyalty to Jesus, will stand. Another thing the Lord's been speaking to me about through this is that the Lord gives and the Lord takes away, as Job said, and blessed be the name of the Lord. You see, I planted all those trees and I delighted in them for years, more than a decade. I just loved them. Every time I saw them, I thanked God. But then God blew his wind and they all fell down. Now, in mercy and grace, he preserved our lives this time. But shouldn't we fear him who has such mighty power? Shouldn't we have the fear of God? As I drove through our little city and saw such devastation, and the first day, the people just stood there, agape, looking at everything. Trees leaning on partially crushed roofs, trees crushing cars, trees crushing garages and decks, large sections of sod and root upended by fallen trees, and privacy fences utterly blown apart everywhere. I realized anew as I looked at the now open view of people's yards. I saw the American dream. That is the idea that anyone willing to work hard can build their own little sanctuary, a comfortable home, a walled-off piece of property, a swimming pool, a well-tended hedge or garden by which to end a day in a place of peace and beauty. Now, this is very similar to the vision of the good life as envisioned by the prophets of the Bible. Every man under his own vine, every man under his own fig tree. And there's nothing wrong with this. I think it's a beautiful ideal, and it's been partially realized by so many here in America. But God blew his wind and tore much of it apart. Swimming pools and grills and lawn chairs and deck furniture torn up and laid open as wooden fence pieces lay scattered in every direction. These fence pieces had been privacy fences, that which just walls off the little sanctuaries from everybody else and gives just a little taste of peace. A sanctuary, however, is only valid if God is actually there in the midst of it. Without God in our lives, nothing's sacred. Thus, all false Edens, God showed me, will come apart, especially in the pressures coming to bear in the last days. And then, of course, I'm going to tell you something personal. It's the lesson that we can learn from our experience with our chickens. On the day that the storm suddenly broke in on us, our grandchildren ran out to try and round up the 16 chickens that we have and get them into the coop, which is the one my son-in-law Matt built. Now, have you ever tried to round up frantic chickens while the wind is blowing and the thunder's starting? We could only get 4 of them into the coop. The other 12 would just have to fend for themselves, but we would pray for them. And I want to repeat this. It got to the point where we just had to go inside and leave them because we couldn't round them up. Now, while we were in the basement watching the scariest storm that we'd ever seen, just out our basement window, there were constant prayers going up for these wayward chickens who wouldn't go into the coop. And when the storm stopped, we saw that the coop itself had been blown over on its side and had even been flipped and rolled by the wind. Now, how would we break it to our dear grandchildren that these chickens had died? We went out and opened the overturned coop to find 4 badly frightened hens clustered together but unhurt. Then, as the winds died down, the 12 other chickens began to emerge from the tall grass, clucking and pecking as they came. How we all praised God for answered prayer. We just praised Him. We just blessed Him as a family. Now, is there a lesson in this folksy story? Well, I think so, to whoever has ears to hear. What's the first lesson we can get out of this? It's a simple one. God's faithful. He's good. He cares even about little things. Jesus once told us that a bird can't fall out of a tree without God taking note of it, and that we are worth far more than any birds or many birds. Now, the application. A storm is brewing spiritually, breaking soon in all of its wrath on all the world. As my little grandchildren prayed for those chickens, we must pray for our loved ones, especially those many who have strayed, who have left the church, who have backslidden, and who will not come in, but expose themselves instead to the elements of this world, not really realizing what's about ready to come. Now, faithful ministers have long been trying to gather people into God's fellowship. That's true. The church. But in this individualistic, self-oriented culture, it's very difficult to gather people. It's as difficult or perhaps more difficult than herding chickens or even more. A chicken coop isn't an exciting or entertaining place for a chicken to be, but it is a place where chickens can ride out a storm. Now, public worship, Bible teaching, admonition, correction, and instruction in righteousness, that's not what this generation thinks is exciting, stimulating, or even entertaining. Thus, people think nothing of blowing off church. Now, church is despised and ill thought of in this self-oriented and toxic culture, even among many who profess to be Christians. There's a crisis of authority as well. Everyone is their own expert, and they don't want to let pastors and shepherds truly be shepherds. Now, God meant for His people to be church. He calls us sheep. We're to remain in fellowship, especially when the storm hits full. But there are some who we will just have to pray for, that in God's mercy they will see, and even though they won't come in, perhaps they'll make it through the storm, clinging to the roots of the grass like those chickens, praying to God And surely, through grace, it is possible that God can save them, for God is good. God bless you.